I mean, it was a long time ago. Been writing choral music primarily. If you know my name, it's kind of in the Beckenhorst catalog, a little bit in Lorenz. I started out at Soundfork, which is kind of the Bob Jones University, a different segment of people, but born again Christians, and I was raised in church, in a Baptist church, so if you know some of my music, a lot of it kind of reflects a little bit of the conservative culture. I started out as a congregational pianist, though, probably from the age of 12 or 13. So if I played, I played by ear, this was where my heart was. And so when I went into music teaching, just because I didn't know what else to do with my life, but always came back to congregational company. So even in a lot of my choral writing, if you know some of it, just has a lot of that flavor in there. And sometimes I try to even put the congregation into the choral anthems. I'll do anything I can to unite the church together. I am not against special music, as we call it, but I really do feel it's a biblical mandate to sing, but it's one of the most unifying experiences we can do as a corporate body is to sing together. So I get almost jittery at this topic, I'll be honest with you, because it is so close to my heart, and I even get emotional about it because I want to tell you why I'm giving this session. I live in a very unadorned city. I mean, it's like car mechanics, farmers, these are not educated, musically educated people. Dear, and not unintelligent, but not musically trained. I've church for about 450, I mean, it's a good size. We have a Christian school. But for the history of the church, they just kind of sing. It's one of those plotty, for decades, they sang this way. And I won't give you all of my life history, but God brought me back home against my will, to be honest with you. Didn't want to be there. In fact, I really tried to get out of it many times. And God kept me there. And I believe it was to partly change the culture, help change the, not single-handedly, there I have help, but change the singing culture of our church. And if you could hear them now, they sing like a choir, and it's like the most beautiful moment. And I mean, I could write choral anthems of the yin-yang, but to hear these people sing, and they could probably not even articulate why, but when they break into 4-part harmonies, and I'm gonna give a little bit of this in here and how to do that, but I feel like I'm standing here in a before and after picture. Okay, so this is the best way to sell a product, is when you see the before and then the after, you think, oh, I gotta have that after picture. If I can show you the after picture, this is what I'm here to tell you about. So, I gave a little handout. I mean, you don't have to write anything if you don't want, but this is something just to kind of keep our thoughts in mind. I felt like it might be better to go back, here's my glasses, it might be thank you. Keep me in mind. To go back in history, if we really think of the history of the church, and you go back even to Bible times, how did people sing? What was their accompaniments like? And so if you go all the way through history, it really helps us to know. I went to England last summer on a kind of a Hindi tour. We studied for 11 days. We studied all these cemetery plots and cities all over northern England, just to understand what the lives of hymn writers were like. And when I went through all these years, it was probably a span of 300 years, I thought, I get it now. And so when you go into history, it really kind of shows you why we're here. What 2025, how did we get here from the Middle Ages or before that? So here's my take on this. And before I get too far ahead, I do want to tell you, I'm really here to help you, so I'm going to keep my eye on the clock. And my goal is to save at least 10 to 15 minutes for a Q&A at the end, because this isn't just to rattle facts off to you. This is really to help you in whatever way I can. That's my goal. It's not that I know it all, but I want to give you tools so that you go back into your churches and you see them sing too, unless they are already masters of this, which chances are many of us are not. I mean, it's a hard thing. We swim upstream, I think, in some ways as pianists. So let's jump in a little bit. So if you look at this, kind of this background, I've spelled it out a little bit for you. In the early days of church history, I want you to think about even in the Psalms, whenever instruments are mentioned, in the context of the instrument itself, it's not really listed as an accompaniment tool. It's part of the expression. So in the Psalms, lift your hands and your voices and your psalms and hymns and spiritual songs were all coming out of that era of, think of the instruments that were used, the lyre and the harp and the tambourine. I mean, they were part of the expression. So it really didn't occur to anyone that this could be an accompaniment. So I guess my point is, it was just kind of part of the package, okay? Then you move on to the Middle Ages and the Renaissance, and here's Martin Luther, and he says, the organ is part of the heaviest instrument, but it's a sign of Baal. The organ is bad, 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 because this is going to distract people from worship. It's a big beast of an instrument, and it is. But Martin Luther says it's bad, so only the human voice should be the main instrument in singing, okay? Bach comes along, this is the 1685, and he's composing organ and cantatas for his churches. For his church where he was employed, and he's a devout Christian, as we know. I mean, he signed his music, Solo Deo Gloria. I mean, obviously, he was a devout Christian, but he was unappreciated. Kind of misunderstood, really, because he made the organ such a big deal. So now it's just a lot of controversies happening in the church. Organ is way too big. We should just limit it to the human voice. I want to pause for a second and tell you why if you're kind of drawing some conclusions from this history, so often there's resistance to what's happening in the church. So that's what kind of creates our controversy. Do we ever experience that today? Yes, we do. Okay, but it just shows you that nothing is new under the sun, as Ecclesiastes says. So 1700s come along, and the instruments are frowned upon, and John Wesley, who's a big boy, says, I have no objection to using instruments in worship, provided they are neither heard nor seen. So obviously, it is still, by the theologians and the preachers of that time, who are very influential. I mean, we're going hundreds of years that organs and anything big and powerful is way too distracting. Now the mid to late 1800s comes along, and the upright piano is part of culture. But where is it being played? Bars. Yeah, the saloons. So is it a happy instrument? Is it part of worship? No, this is terrible. This is sin. This is terrible. This is going to make our people sinful. So we don't need instruments. This is even worse. Okay, we're going downhill. So early 1900s come along, and now think about this. The rise of revival meetings are, it's even prior Billy Graham. This is like Jonathan Edwards, George Whitefield. These are traveling preachers going from town to town. And over the course of time, they're bringing along with them song leaders who are kind of making a lot of commotion and really stirring up and making people sing. And all of a sudden people go, whoa, this is fun. This is like a part of the package of preaching. So now you have influential preachers who are bringing in musicians, and all of a sudden it's okay. So my point is, if it's fun enough and the influential voices who are respected make it okay, now it's okay. Okay? So I'm coming to a point here. I'll finish this and I'll come back to it. Okay, so mid to late 1900s. Now we have the rise of hymn playing teachers. Now it's part of piano lessons. If a kid takes piano lessons, this is a lot of times, even if they're not in church, this is part of his curriculum. We'll get out a hymnal, we'll play through what the core parts give us. I came to, Soundforth was a music division of the BJ Press. It's no longer a name now, but when I came in 2006, and we had like 30 years of a curriculum being printed just for hymn playing. I mean, this was like a big deal. And a kid would learn levels where you'd start out with just the four parts, then you'd add in the octave chord, and then you would do something with the right hand in level 3, and it kind of built from there. But it was still very and that's how they were taught, okay? So now it was very deliberate, it was very strong, and the intros had to be very clear. Nothing wrong with that, but as the pendulum is swinging back and forth, and we're never really landing in the middle, you can see that how the styles have just kind of come back and forth and back and forth. So, now we're in a completely different era, as with technology, as everything is advanced. Now we're in lead sheets. And I would say ensembles and musicians have changed as well. I actually did intentionally, and I'm not against keyboards, but I intentionally called this workshop Changing from the Piano, because I still believe the piano has a voice in church rather than the keyboard. Keyboard is not bad, it's not wrong, and I want to be careful of not bringing this, pendulum back into one side myself, but there is so much you can do with this piano. There's also so much you can do with this piano, if you know what I mean. It's a large instrument capable of a lot of noise and a lot of power, a lot of strength, but the point is, we're expanded with digital technology, with digital age, where somebody can write a hymn and that day it's online and churches can sing it that Sunday. I mean, we don't have to wait for hymnals to be printed, which took decades before. And hymnals aren't bad, of course, but I'm just telling you how, I'm just reminding the morph of time. We have completely, radically changed from no accompaniment is good to now we have anything is fine. So this is where I'm trying to kind of come back to the middle and say, okay, what is music intended to do in church, no less? So, and I listed out some of the non-traditional orchestral instruments. We use mostly orchestral instruments in our church, so I'm speaking from that context myself, but I'm not against others. If it's, if it works for you, if it's not as distracting, guitar, cajon, djembe, handshakers. I mean, these are all in the Psalms. These types of instruments are in the Psalms. They're not sinful, they're just how they're used. Another thing that I feel like has really influenced our culture is folky instruments and singer-songwriters are now very popular via YouTube. Kind of like, when a speaker became popular and all of a sudden everybody thought he was great, the YouTube singer-songwriter, I think, has probably more impact than that now, because you hear a voice and all of a sudden it's like, oh, this is great, we can perform this at our church. Chances are it can't, like he is, but at the same time, it's just as influential. So you can kind of see how culture changes with whoever is the influential voice at that time. Another one that I've noted is hymn architecture is really changed. Do you remember, and some of you might be here, so this is not a condemning comment at all, but in a standard hymnal, you'd have stanza, refrain, stanza, refrain, stanza, refrain, stanza, refrain. So the creativity had to be on the part of whoever's playing, and chances are they really weren't, because there was nothing written in there for them. Now, I mean, this is just, I know this just this past Sunday, it will go stanza, stanza, refrain, stanza, refrain, key change, stanza, refrain, refrain, tag. That's usually our architecture at our church, and it's not, again, nothing wrong, but it's like, I thought even as a pianist, I'm always doing mental loops in my mind, thinking, where do I go next? And it's a little more stressful, I would say, than just predictable whatever follows the stanza before. Styles are way more fluid than they were. So a lot of these thoughts here are born out of, in 2020, when all churches, most of them, went online, and we were watching ourselves. We like recorded some of our services and we watched when we weren't meeting, as hilarious now, and I started looking at all these church live streams, and that's when I thought, oh, word, this is where congregational singing is, really. I mean, so typically you have the band or whoever that's, etc., is a bunch of plodding musicians up front, and you see the backs of people, so this is where the camera is typically, and they just stand there, waiting to know when to enter. That was like, and it was church after church after church, and I would type in random churches and watch their live streams, because I had nothing else to do, and why not? So, and I thought, I can't believe this is happening. So I changed a little bit of my career, to be honest with you. I was writing choral music at the time, and I thought, okay, let's go do something else for congregational singing, because this is not good. I mean, obviously, if singing is supposed to be a corporate, unifying experience, it's clearly not. conference in Nashville, the Getty Sing Conference. Okay, one person. I'm advertising it because I think it's incredible. It's the Gettys put this on. It's a global conference now. It used to be nationwide, but it's held in Nashville. It's actually coming up in a couple weeks. I say that to say we are now, I think, in kind of an outbreak of modern hymnody. We have a lot of new hymn writers. Again, with the digital age, we have the offerings of all these voices in hymnody that we didn't before. So I think this is not Bible, this is thoughts from Molly, but with the rise of these modern hymn writers, our hymn repertoire has totally reformed. Once in a while, I'll pull out the hymnal that I used to grow up on. It was a Baptist church hymnal, but I think it was called The Hymnal. It was brown. Does that sound right? Okay. I mean, usually the first hymn is either Come Thou Fount or Sing the Mighty Power of God, or something like that. And then it was a lot of choruses from the 80s. Not bad, but very weak in doctrine. And so what I think that we've kind of come this gamut now, where the songs we're singing with the strengthening of preaching, we're now sifting through our hymns and making sure that the doctrine is biblically sound. Praise the Lord. I mean, we've come a long way. And I guess here's where I'm landing the plane here, and I want to be conscious of time because this could really go on. But with this rise of modern hymnody, we have probably, and I'm not going to capitalize on this, but even in this room, probably a span of maybe 50 years of age, okay? I'm 47, so I would say even in my prior, when I started playing, even in my teen years till, should Jesus not return until I'm in my 70s or 80s, we have so much time. And in that time, I think pianists, it's hard for them to change sometimes in their styles. I was taught in that octave chord era. I've had to change, and I don't feel that old. But even in the last 5 years, I've had to totally modernize my style in order to accommodate the new hymns that can't sound like they're in 1985. That's my heart, is what I see, I'm trying to choose my words so carefully because I don't believe the younger generation's lost, but so many of them are leaving churches. And I think some of it could be blamed on the music style. I mean, frankly, nobody wants to go into a church and feel like you're just bored all the time. And I'm not saying we've got to add drums in order to make it good. I'm just saying we have to evaluate and make sure our music accomplishes what music is supposed to accomplish, even in the church. So here's the guts of what I'm going to tell you, okay? How do we improve upon, and I'm not saying you're doing it wrong. I don't even know you. You could be doing it perfectly, and you're here because I'm preaching the church choir. So I want you to know this is not like I'm peering down. I'm telling you what I've learned the hard way, because I've had the 450 member, church that I didn't know what I was going to do because they wouldn't sing. And in the last couple of years, they have sung. So here we are. The first one I would tell you is listen. This, I think, is if I could tell you nothing else, listen to how you play, because it will shape the way they sing. That's your blank. You have to be aware, and I'm going to set aside the nerves and the bad days we have as pianists, and some of you might have kids you're trying to corral in the pew. I mean, there are a number of challenges you face, even sick. I mean, if I get sick, I don't have many options. I really have played with thinking I may throw up after this service. So I understand when some of you say, man, I'm it at my church. I know, I'm there with you. But at the same time, when you come, it is really easy, and I would say, I'm preaching myself here, it is very easy for a pianist who has practiced their whole life in a practice shack, by themselves, and practice by themselves, to all of a sudden now you're playing for a ton of people, and all of a sudden you got to listen completely different. It's like retraining a dog that's at 12 years old. I mean, it's really hard to do. We've all heard pianists that barrel through things. My piano teacher used to call killing snakes, like, they're just plodding and everything's barreling through and they're going to get through it. And that's the way people sing, or they stop singing. One of the two. And it doesn't create beauty, let's put it that way. So here's I would say, beware of the impact of the weight of your sound, how loud you are, your phrasing, your style, and your texture. And the only way to do it is to listen to how you're playing, not just how, all of us listen to ourselves anyway, I don't have to tell you to do that, but listen how your playing is shaping their singing. There are times when I'm playing when I have to totally back off or completely stop if I feel like, they're singing in parts. I don't even want to impose more on this. They're fine on their own. And I will stop playing and just let them go. And it is glorious. Those are the types of ideas I would tell you, because that's how you can back off as an accompanist and let them go. It's really beautiful. But again, it comes back to listening. Sometimes I have a really great music director I work with, and he'll say, are you going to do a key change? I'll say, I don't know. I'll wait till I know how they're singing. Because sometimes they're not ready. They're just unsupported, and they're not gonna do well if you drop out or if you do a fancy key change and hope they go. It could be a flop. And if the risk is high, I won't do it. But I'm just saying, I listen to how they're singing, and if they're going, give yourself that freedom. I'll give you an example of this. I haven't played much here. I don't know what this piano sounds like. This is our Baptist world, so I'm already apologizing for it, but it was a couple years ago, our music director said, let's sing I Must Tell Jesus. And I was like, oh, that's so Baptist. It was so like plotty. What am I going to do with that song? It's a 9/8. It's so labored. He said, just try it. And this was like on Friday, where I didn't have a whole lot of time to think about it. But I realized if I started right at the beginning, if the intro was shaped beautifully, they will sing beautifully, even if it's a plotty song. So, I'm trying to think. They're feeling the breaths with you, and the shape of the phrases are, you're birthing them for them. They don't even know you're doing it, but you're doing it. That's what I'm talking about. Okay. You sing beautifully that way. Okay. Number 2 is assess. Assess yourself. This is hard. I hate doing this, to be honest with you, because I think, that just, we do this anyway, and we're hard on ourselves. But I think we do need to assess every Sunday, Wednesday, whenever you play. Assess yourself in the impact of their singing. So are they trying to compete with you? Are they trying to match you? What's happening in that? It's kind of like the next stage after, if you're listening, now you're assessing. This is number 2. So I actually had one person, very unmusical, say to me, I kind of feel trapped sometimes when you're playing. And I was like, oh, I don't want that. But I knew what they meant, is they felt like I was locking them in. And so I wasn't really assessing is what I was doing. I was just kind of driving the boat myself. And so that's what I mean. When you assess yourself as a musician, you're helping them breathe better and feel more secure in the end. I would also say this too. Pianists are told to support and play with confidence. And so this is about that, but it's really adjusting so that you're not just there to support, or, we kind of get in that grippy, I don't know if you do, maybe you do, maybe you don't, but I always feel like I've got to control a little bit, and just to kind of help them do their thing. But I think that's when it kind of falls apart sometimes. So the caution is just to make sure you're lightening up when you need to, or driving in a little bit more. And there's times for both of those things, and it's that, and then it's all about texture. He mentioned holy, holy, holy. I would say holy, holy, holy is probably a good example of that, because every stanza can be a totally different texture. You've got a whole, like a choral anthem within a hymn. So, and I try not to be predictable, but a lot of times I think hymns are written in a way where you have the first stanza is like the big statement, the big ideas. Second is a little bit more development. Third is a little bit more of a quieter, prayerful tone. And then you've got a lot of bigger words and bigger ideas for the fourth stanza, so it gives you a good key change moment. So holy, 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 obviously it's, I'm not trying to be trite with that, but the first part is really just to establish the ideas. But then that's what I'm telling you. When you assess yourself, you can think, okay, now what can I do differently for that second stanza to make it different? So I'm assessing myself the whole time. Discussion, I guess, over emails. The sound world is really what you're establishing for them to jump into. Now, I'm going to pause on this one and tell you, I have tried this in the last couple of years to not quote the melody of a hymn in my introduction, because I can give a better sound world without it. I know that's a big thing, because we have to hear the melody in order for people to know, but do we? I would say we may not. Okay, now if the hymn is completely unfamiliar, if you're teaching your church a new hymn, I might be kind of walking on the fence to tell you this. You don't. I mean, it's good to give them what they're going to sing in that case, but if they know it, if they've sung it their whole life, and you've got a church of all different generations, they don't need to hear that melody. They need a sound world. So let me give you an idea. Come Thou Found is one that probably we all sing. What do they need in an intro? Let's kind of go over them. They need the key. They need the tempo. The feel, which is kind of the sound world we're after. They need the meter. Yes, okay. So, and that's one thing we forget about, and sometimes I've heard a lot of pianists do this. They want to do some creative intro, and they're in 4/4, and then we've got to sing in 3, because they didn't plan it out. And I've been there. I've done that, because I'm like just kind of going with my own ideas. I'm like, oh, my work. We had to shave off a beat of that whole measure. Oh, me. But this is the sound world that you can establish, where when they're jumping in, this is kind of what's turning them into a choir. So what if you didn't start with da 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 da, and the only way I can tell you, and I know some of you are going, okay, what if I don't have the ability to come up with something? Okay, here's what I would tell you. Zoom in to where you would be in the middle of the hymn. How would you play the middle of that hymn? What's your texture feel like? Now zoom out and use that as your introduction, okay? This is how I'm thinking usually, so I'm giving you my little secrets. In the middle of Come Thou Fount, what would I play? Something a little bit more rhythmic, obviously. It's kind of the feel of this hymn anyway. So if I go, we're in 3, we have D, and typically, or C. I'll use C so it's easier. C, 3, and something rhythmic-ish, okay? What's a question? How about you give me a hymn that you think, oh, I need an idea for this. What's a hymn that you sing a lot at your church? And let's try to dissect it while we're here.
Oh, 4,000 tongues.
Okay, that's actually a great one. We just did this on Sunday, and I thought, I don't know that I like this one. And I'll tell you why, because it's so short, it's hard to develop. So I get this. All right, good one. All right, let's do the key. What would we sing it in? What's a good key? Okay, let's go with F just because it's yes, but actually, funny thing, I actually do play it in E flat because it's lower. We lower all of our keys in our church too, so we'll get to that concept in a minute. So, all right, so we're in what meter? We're in 4, yeah, unless you're thinking of a different melody. One and 2. You're right, it is 3. 3, 1, and 2. Okay, so here's an idea I would think, and this is how my brain is totally crazy. During prayer, I actually come up with these ideas. I shouldn't tell you that because I try to pray at the same time, but you know, as a pianist, you have to plan, and sometimes I don't get a whole lot of notice. So if I want to make it fun, I'll think, okay, I'm already in my mind, I'm already in stanza 2. So I'm going to zoom on to stanza 2 and think, how can I make this rhythmic and fun? Okay, here's another thing. When it starts on an upbeat like that, you might have to do the upbeat, at least for them to feel that they're going to sing an upbeat rather than the downbeat. Because otherwise, I may have thrown them a little bit of a curveball. Don't throw them curveballs if you're not going to quote the melody. Words to the wise. All right. So here's. What are we singing again? I'm trying to boil this down because it really doesn't have to be octave chord anymore. You really can throw in some cool things and it's not hard. So we'll come back to that again. All right. So here's another one. I was thinking of one that we all try to, okay, I lost myself in my notes. Okay, another hymn that we think of is It Is Well, and that's another one where I want to give you some ideas. One of the things when you're doing this, when you're thinking of how to make the texture good, think orchestrally. So obviously you're thinking textures, you're thinking creativity, but think of how would Brahms, or Mozart, or or something that fits into that sound world, how would they approach this hymn? One of the ways I tried with, I'm bringing up it as well because I was listening to Rachmaninoff, and if you know Rachmaninoff's writing, it's very, he had large hands, and so obviously all of his stuff is just very, big arpeggios and tense with, no effort at all. But, so how could we do something like a powerful hymn like It Is Well? We can use his ideas. He's not alive, he doesn't care. So, I'm gonna take, maybe his left hand, a lot of, we're in 4, right? You couldn't come up with yourself. A couple things I'm doing though, I'm going to give you pedal tones are huge. So, even in the chorus, if you can, they're going to still find their notes and their harmonies, even if you give this little. This is why I bring up Rachmaninoff because he did a lot of this. These big, this is where you can do the piano versus the keyboard that doesn't have this ability. So you're going to use just a really low octaves that Rachmaninoff would do. And even against the 5 chord. And all of a sudden they're like, oh, I didn't even know that hymn could be so beautiful. The chorus is the same way. Something that's powerful but doesn't dominate. That's the whole point. I'm trying to keep this pendulum in the middle, okay? So, I would also say don't feel like you have to play the melody in your right hand all the time. This comes back to voicing and shaping and being aware and assessing. So, especially on a hymn like It Is Well. You don't have to play, I did hear because a lot of times women are really afraid to sing that by themselves. So I usually go, they probably could do it without you. But what if I did not play? So let's go back to the stanza. Usually if you get the congregation started, you can back away. You don't have to play this melody with your right hand. So, I'm doing everything with my left hand. That's where I say think orchestrally. That's something the flutes would do if you're writing for an orchestra. Sometimes we have song leaders that pick things that are like 2 minutes before the service. You don't have the time. Hopefully that's not the case. I grew up in that era, but hopefully before you come, you've thought through these texts so that you can be playing the text rather than just the music. Okay? I do believe that one of the problems of hymnals, if I can say it this way, because, in a choral anthem you have markings and you have shapings and you have, it's not just creative accompaniments. It's the musical markings, you're telling people what to do. In a hymnal, you're not. So it's every man for himself, and I think over time that can happen where people just kind of barrel through because they're not thinking musically because those markings aren't enforcing that, policing it, if you will. That's what I say when I say, okay, that's your job. Think beyond the hymnal. How many of you do use hymnals? Like, that's what you use. Okay, so we're not past that. It's still there. Then you be the one to police yourself. And when you look at that hymnal, look at that as not just what the text says, but the architecture, as we were talking about with Holy, Holy, Holy. The big statements, the developed statements, what's potential to be a cappella or not. What is this a key change final stanza? It might not be. Not all of them are. And I try not to be predictable, but that's kind of sometimes, that's a lot of times how hymns go. Modern hymnody might not be so much. So I told you before, the architecture of modern hymnody. Stanza, I'm thinking like Amazing Grace, My Chains Are Gone, if you sing this one. It starts with the stanza, then the refrain, then the stanza, then the refrain. And sometimes, actually, with other hymns, they'll go back and they'll do a half of a refrain again. And then a refrain, then a tag. I mean, it's kind of insane if you think about it. But the whole point is, where was I going with that? Meditate on the text so that you know where we're going, not just musically, but where's the text going? Because that's how they'll sing. I cannot tell you how many times I'm just being transparent with you. I'll think, oh, I didn't mess up this week. I feel like I did a good job. And somebody will come out and they have no idea what I played, how sweaty I am, and all the creativity I just poured myself in the piano. They said, that third stanza of that hymn moved me to tears. I think, yes, that's why we're doing what we're doing. It's not for creativity. This is really for Christ to be seen and for the text to be displayed so that we make much of God in our music. And that's always a rebuke to me, and I think, yeah, you're right. This is how you felt when you sang those words. It matters nothing of how I played. So here's some final thoughts, and then I do want to we have about 10 minutes for questions. Cultivate a servant's heart. You wouldn't be here if you weren't already servants, so I'm talking to the choir, but I do believe it is really easy to come in feeling already tired, already spent, already burnt out. Oh, this is like the 85th Sunday, or, I'd rather be with my kids, or there's just a lot of things that pull on our simple human flesh. And I have to lay down myself and say, okay, Lord, use me today because I'm tired or I'm sick or whatever. And I am subservient to these people. This is about their singing, not my playing. Yes, I want to use every ounce of my training to serve them, and this is why we're talking about these things, but I am subservient to their needs. You'd think that would be obvious, but so many times I run in pianists and I think, oh, they are either a bench hog or it's just their pride gets in the way, and there's not a whole lot of things that are more unattractive than a proud pianist who is stubborn and won't change. So I would say let's guard against that. I guard this with myself. So be humble and willing and learn to it and adapt. Same thing, new hymns are challenging. I mean, there's no doubt about it. I feel like every time I would have an office in our church and he'll come in and I hear this knock and I think, oh, here's the new hymn again. And I put mine, for our church, I notate it, so they have a hymn sheet in their bulletin because we like to put the melodies. Everybody's different in how they teach new hymns, but we like to teach at least with the melody on a sheet of paper so they can see something printed. And so it's going to add to my workload. And I think, okay, this is my job to help them learn something new to make much of the Lord. Remain flexible and sensitive. This is just kind of, part of our jobs. There are so many memes out there about accompanist that, you have no idea the magician that I am, and we can kind of feel that martyr syndrome, but I do believe it's a joy when you think about what you get to do, and that's what I'm trying to point out to you. As you seek to be creative for your congregation, and God will bless this, and it might not be in ways where you thought, I never thought I'd be back home, and now I'm going on year 13 where I thought it would be like 6 months. But I love it. I love serving these people because I hear them sing every week, and it's moving. as you serve and give, God will enlarge your impact. I've actually now been, I don't teach piano lessons anymore. I used to teach little kiddie piano lessons and I'm too busy to do that. But I realize now, kids are watching me. It's not just adults are part of the package. I mean, I've had kids like draw pictures of me at the piano and I think, oh my word, they're watching my facial expressions. They're watching, yes, you know, when somebody else messes up and I've got my face is behind the live stream camera. That's the other thing. I think, oh, you never know who is watching you. We are in a place of impact. And you don't think about it because we're behind the piano. And I like it. I'd rather, in fact, I'm even uncomfortable in front of you here. But I realize that comes with this position of influence. Every week, every 6 days, you're impacting a lot of times younger kids who are watching you. So may He alone be glorified. I have to think that way every single week. He must increase, I must decrease. This is our job. So I intentionally wanted to at least cut out about 10 minutes early so we could have Q&A. So I'm going to open it for anything you would like to ask. And if I don't know, I might tell you I don't know, but I'll come up with an answer somehow or help you somehow because I really want to see you succeed in what you do. Can I ask before we do that, how many of you are regular Sunday pianists? Every Sunday, it's all you. Okay, how many of you are doubled by other instruments? Okay, so the rest of you are just piano, maybe organ too? You have an organ? Okay. How many of you have a choir that you play for in addition to your congregation? Okay, good. I mean, I think there's still a place for choirs. I hope there is. That would impact my job. But I love the choir. Part of what I'm saying today, though, I remember there was a point in my life about 10 years ago where every single Sunday we made these beautiful moments with the choir, and then I would turn around and go, and it felt like I did for the congregation. And I thought, why are they doing this? This should be just as beautiful as the choral music part of our service. So that's, I still believe in choral music, but I still want the congregation to feel just as served. So, questions? Anything? Yes?
You just touched on this with the instrumentation question. So what would you advise us in terms of how to incorporate these suggestions when you are on piano and organs playing on things as well?
Yes. That comes back to the pairing, being aware, being sensitive. So you're kind of locked in a little bit more. You're locked in with their key. Let me ask this: how many of you are ear players where you don't need the music, you could just play without it? Okay, that's a benefit, I would say, and it's sometimes a disadvantage as well because of this type of thing. And it's not impossible; it just presents some challenges. We don't have an organ anymore, but I remember those days. I would say, as much as you can, you are the musical shaping. We have meetings in our church. We have not a full orchestra, probably about a 20-member orchestra. Brass, who don't play on everything, okay? Strings, and a lot of flutes. Because what church orchestra doesn't have a lot of flutes and girls who play flutes? But it does lock me in. And I would say I've grown into a role now where the intros, that's why I spent a little time on the texture and the character of an intro, because you're if you can, unless they play the intro, they play the intro. Okay, so they're calling the shots a little bit more, which some of these things might be out of your hands, but if you could, maybe that's where you can define the moment a little bit more. We still sing "A Mighty Fortress Is Our God," and there was one day where I thought, I want a strong moment, but it doesn't have to be with the organ. Okay, so and remember, this is an upbeat, so. You can kind of hear the melody in that, but that intro there, even if I play and the organ can just play their thing and maybe keep us together, but it doesn't have to drive the whole boat that way. That might be, I would say your intro is probably your best friend in that case, if you can have it. I would say also, I didn't ask this question. We are in an era, I think, where pianists are a little bit more, there's a little more license for them to lead rather than this guy here. I'm not against that, but that was a long era, and I don't know that it's necessary. We have a great music director, but he doesn't do anything with his arms because they're really listening to this, let's be honest, okay? So he's not unneeded, is that a word? He is needed, I'll say it that way, but just not in the sense that he used to be maybe 40 years ago. That may not be the case if he had a weak pianist. That could be, you might feel the need more to be more deliberate with his downbeats and his directing. But to be honest with you, I say all that to say, you know, people respond orally, A-U-R-A-L-O-Y, not orally more than they do visually in this context. So really, that's why I'm looking at you to be the leaders, because you have it. So, anyway, I don't know why I got on that, but I would say some of you might be able to do that. I think there's another level to that where I've seen a lot of, and this might be more of a male role if they're the pianist, to be able to lead from the piano with a mic and like speak through all of it. That's hard to do. Do you do that? You're nodding your head. Yeah, it is. I've realized, I've done this in ladies' things before, and you're exercising so many parts of your brain, the exhaustion level is like insane. I don't know how to do it, but it can be done. And I think if you're training yourself and you're kind of in that exercise, it's like a muscle flexor. If you're conditioned, I think it doesn't feel as hard, but it is no doubt a lot more taxing in the mind. Any other questions? Yes.
So when you were talking about using that pedal point, so you gave the example of Rachmaninoff, when you are working with other instrumentalists, how does that work? Because you're technically changing that harmonic structure by using a pedal point.
Yeah.
So if you've got cellists,
Right.
so what do you do?
Does it conflict with
Right.
with other bass instruments? And we have actually a tuba player who's almost a professional tuba player in our, now, he doesn't play all the time because it really is too much for a church, even of our size. But, does it conflict? This comes back to point number 1 and 2. I always have to be aware if I am conflicting. Now, I would say, if where you sit on the platform has a lot to do with this. We have our, much to my chagrin, our brass guys, they sit behind me, and I have to just like, yeah, I know, and then they want to blow so hard every Sunday. But that's when I say, you know, a lot of times where you're positioned on the platform has a lot to do with what you hear. And if he's playing the bass note and I'm gonna conflict with that, then no, I will back off. There are times though where actually if he's, you know, I mentioned how I can play a root position octave against a 5 chord and it doesn't clash. Because if he's on an A and I'm playing a D, it actually doesn't conflict because we still can complement each other. It just is, what is the proportion of our dynamic level? If he's gonna be really thick and heavy, I probably can't. So this is the awareness thing. That's why I said your first goal as a pianist is to listen to yourself. How are you complementing? How are you shepherding? Because a lot of it is, it's so much, you know, and I would say, be intentional with where you have that piano on your platform. It might be the middle rather than the side. I grew up in the side era where it was like the piano was like way off in Never Never Land, you know, and the director was in the middle. It doesn't have to be that way. I think, you know, if your piano can be moved, please, by all means, because you're so much more aware of sound when you sit in different places. I mean, it's like moving your pew, you know, on a Sunday. All of a sudden, you meet new people. This is how it is. So, yeah. And I would say string players are not necessarily reliant on you, so maybe those could be the people that are off. Guitarists, we'll let them do their own thing. I don't have much to say about them. And honestly, a rhythm instrument, you know, that might be, that's another, how everything is the same. Every layer is the same. They never stop the djembe, it's like, and I think, if I spoke at the same vocal level the whole time, you would be like, get me out of here. It is grating to hear the same thing, the same volume, the same texture. Be very aware of how you're coming across from stanza to stanza. Anything else? Yes?
Okay, so when you were talking about doing an a cappella verse, what are your thoughts though on how often you should use a feature like that within one service?
That's a great question. I love that question. We try to do at least once every week if we can. Now, there's always like, well, there's baptism this day or whatever. There might be some kind of changes in the service that would disrupt a little bit more. But I always feel like they feel like they're missing out if they didn't get their moment. So I try to, in any hymn, I think, okay, is this the place I can drop out? And are we in a key to do it? Sometimes we're too low, and then it's going to fall apart, because then the basses want to sing low, and they can't. It's too low. So you have to think of it that way. Another idea is when you, I would say this is hard, but I've learned all these things the hard way. So I'm teaching you my mistakes so you won't make them. Don't change keys and then drop out. I did that a couple times, and all of a sudden I thought, oh my word, what in the world did I do? I just set them up for a total disaster, And actually, the key change was very clear. We went from D to E, I think, and I felt like, okay, they soared right into it, and then I dropped out, and it was like they just went right back to D. So I intentionally did not come back in, because I thought, oh, that's not going to happen. Yeah. So those little things to be aware of. Yes.
So what about like if it's a really long stanza that could effectively be divided in half? Would you do it for the whole stanza, or would you maybe only do it for half of the stanza?
Yeah, I would. So
We're going to have to think of an example.
yeah, well, I'll give you one, actually, because I just went through this with Dan. So Beckenhorst is coming out with congregational arrangements now, where they are easy choral, where the congregation can sing almost the whole time. We're going to do a piece of mine. I just came out with A Silent Night. You will like this one, okay? And I say all that to say, Dan and I had like a 4-day discussion over email of what to do with the piano during the a cappella verse. Everybody knows Silent Night. Did we even need anything? Well, he felt like we did, and I will tell you his reasoning. He's actually very smart. Dan is smart, but we're in the key of A, I think. Okay, so we're in the third stanza, and he said, bring in the piano here and there, just kind of little statements here and there, and it keeps them on the key, but it doesn't dominate, and it still gives them their moment. And all they think is, oh, that was nice. They don't know that you're keeping them on key. They just think you're just decorating. You could do something just a little with your right hand, just a little statements here and there. Maybe at the end of phrases, I wouldn't be too predictable with it, but I mean enough where you're keeping them on the key, and then you're not marching in to pull them either way, but they still feel creative.
You said something about lower all keys.
Yes. Very good. Okay, so what I found, and this was maybe about 5 or 6 years ago, typically, so the hymnal is written in a 4-part, obviously 4-part harmony, but it was written so that all 4 parts were in their standard tessitura. So you put yourself in the typical middle-aged, in fact, what's his name in the last reading session kind of referenced it. The man in the choir, the bass, the one bass who sings an octave lower and on melody at that, Most churches have, and it doesn't have to be just on the male side. I think a lot of people who just cannot sing that high, and they're screaming keys, and now they're just frustrated. So what we found in our church is if I lowered it, and sometimes I'm lowering it even a third, like you said, E flat. Okay, so in what's that hymn you said? 4,000 Tongues. It is written in G. I mean, if you get the congregation up on D, D's and E's, they stopped singing. I'll never forget, it was after I started lowering the keys, and all of a sudden these men were singing, and I thought, where did these people come from? And I'm sitting at the kitchen table, my dad said, just he's eating, and I can still see he said, I haven't sung in years, and all of a sudden I'm singing. And I thought, man, what have we been all of our lives, you know, if all we needed to do was lower the key, certainly. I don't think it has to be done every time, but most of the time, the keys in the hymnal are too high.
So what's the top,
Where's the cutoff? Yeah.
What do you think if we're,
Well, I mean, so here's another thing. D's and E's are pushing it, I feel. In that way, if sometimes I'll play it in a flat, because flats are a little, they're a deeper sound, you know, it's not as bright. So a lot of new hymns are written in D for some reason, I don't know why. So I'll try to play in D flat. And there is something that happens in the human voice that is, it just, all of a sudden they can sing better. I don't think everything has to be in this key, but a lot of times, the B flat to me, B flat octave is kind of where I try to hear for the middle tessitura. Typically stanzas are down here and the refrains are up here. So you have to think, wherever you start for your stanza, is you're adjusting the refrain to be that as well. And I have to think about this for a key change too. So if I want to have a key change, I'll lower it again so that I can arrive where I'm going to go with a key change. Plan ahead. That's the moral of that story. I've done that before, and again, another flop. Lots of mistakes. And they're all public. This is what our job is, you know, every time. I actually did one time. I did this huge key change, and I was like, oh, I felt good about it. And there was no text that came up on the screen. And I realized I had already played stanza 4.
Oh, no.
Yes! Right? So what do you do? I know, it was like the worst. And the music director turned around and went, what did he say? So bless the slide guy, he's a genius, he went back to stanza 1. And we just sing stanza 1. He saved me. And I thank him for that all the time. But all these little mistakes, but we give our lives to the Lord and we entrust our ministry to Him, and He blesses.